What I can tell you is this. Numerous coaches, black coaches, called me expressing how they took issue with that podcast taking place. And I think you know enough to know that that's true. Some of them felt very salty about that. We certainly are not blaming JJ Redick.
When Stephen A. Smith brought this up on his show First Take, Fox Sports host and newly hired head coach of Wisconsin Green Bay, Doug Gottlieb, unloaded.
Can I pause you on that? They were salty because he chose to do a podcast with a white guy or because it hurt Darvin Ham?
Because it hurt Darvin Ham.
Okay.
Because it hurt Darvin Ham.
In short, and we will show what he said momentarily, Gottlieb didn't appreciate Smith's words. Here's a bit more than Gottlieb's rebuttal.
You take all of those things into account, this does not look good. That you got to like, and what I was saying on the air with Wendy last week and Molly was that couldn't have started it during the playoffs. Couldn't have started it after Darvin Ham lost the job. Did you have to start it in the middle of the damn season when he's on the hot seat? Because why? That's what some of the coaches were saying. What I'm saying is you are a person known for being mindful and cognizant of the optics. How could you possibly think that was going to look good?
Doug Gottlieb would take umbrage with the initial quote Smith gave, and here that is. As transcribed by Awful Announcing, Gottlieb would say on his show, and I quote, "Let me state this really carefully. Stephen A. Smith is a race baiter. He is disgraceful saying that on national television. Disgraceful. JJ Redick and LeBron James are clearly friends. They have a relationship. They have mutual respect for one another. The only one who's making it out to be a racial thing is Stephen A. Smith. He is creating this. This is honestly pure evil. That's what bad people do." Gottlieb would continue using his platform by saying this. This is just as bad as the perception that President Trump stokes the white nationalist flame. Same thing. There's no difference. No difference. None. Making it out to be somehow a racial thing? How could you do a podcast with JJ Redick? Because they're friends and he respects him. LeBron James is also friends and respects Tyronn Lue, who coached him to an NBA championship. That one's okay because Ty Lue, former NBA player, is black. JJ Redick, former NBA player, is white. How is that any different? You're not allowed to be friends with a white person? More from Gottlieb. When they hired Max Kellerman, there were two people up for that job. Me and Max Kellerman. Stephen A. Smith didn't want to have me on that set, probably because I would call this bull that he's doing. We didn't have any negative relationship. I had no negative feelings toward him. But this stuff, gross. As Awful Announcing wrote, Smith did bring race into the convo, but he never claimed anyone had an issue with the podcast because Redick is white. And that's the key point that he's missing. In the First Take clip Gottlieb was responding to, Smith clarified the black NBA coaches he spoke to did not have an issue with the podcast because Redick was white. They had an issue with the podcast because they felt LeBron was undermining Darvin Ham. The writer of the piece, Brandon Contes, would continue as well. Smith's recent comments on Redick are starting to sound similar to the one-sided vendetta he has with Max Kellerman. Redick appears destined to leave ESPN and First Take for the Lakers, which he did. And instead of celebrating his colleague getting an NBA coaching opportunity, Smith has spent time condemning the podcast with LeBron, questioning the fit in Los Angeles, and noting that JJ Redick, his former coworker, is an acquired taste. There was one person on the network who appeared to come out against the words of Stephen A. Smith.
Now, I don't appreciate or like how JJ Redick has been talked about.
Sure, it's interesting.
By a lot of people who have been co-workers of JJ Redick. Like, everything he accomplished in basketball would lead you to believe, oh, this guy might be a good coach.
For sure.
Been around a long time, knows a lot of the basketball, is a basketball savant. Mm-hmm. He was actually being introduced on a lot of these shows on ESPN as a guy this guy's a basketball genius. Mm-hmm. He's been around a lot of winning cultures, yada, 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 JJ Redick. And now that JJ Redick got the job, or was seemingly going to get the job, a lot of people on TV are acting like he's not the right guy for the job. If an ex-player with 15 years of experience who is a basketball junkie, who is able to showcase his big brain in the Mind the Game podcast with the star of the team, who happens to be LeBron James, and didn't seem to be nervous, would he not be a guy who is seemingly a good candidate?
And that was, of course, Pat McAfee. Here's my take on all of this, and I do think that it is very, very simple. Doug Gottlieb appears, in my view, to be peeved that he did not get the seat that Max Kellerman did. Doug Gottlieb said, this is why he wouldn't hire me, because I would call bull. Not to give a revisionist history here, but Max Kellerman called bull on Stephen A. lot. He also showed a firm grasp and understanding of things outside of sports and how they are linked to the industry on First Take. There were many times where it appeared that Max Kellerman had the upper hand on social issues and many more. And Stephen A. Smith was the one that came out and said that he thought the show was stale, even though, as we have seen, this is a far different version of the show than what we are used to with a Max Kellerman. So to say the whole reason that Smith didn't want Gottlieb on that show is because Gottlieb would call him out, it's nonsense. Out of anything, Smith doesn't want anybody that'll call him out. I believe after Monica McNutt did so, she made one more appearance and we haven't seen her since. Whether she is on vacation, I saw on Instagram that she's hanging out with friends in what looks like a very cool place. And if that is the case, then so be it. But don't make it out to be like you are the knight in shining armor that would have saved the show. Because at the end of the day, Smith has EP credits. It's under, he incorporates his production company into the show. And there are many more variables at play than Doug Gottlieb saying, well, I'm this badass. And the whole reason he didn't want me is because I would make him look bad and I would call him out on his stuff, which, by the way, a lot of people do. And the most important point in all of this is that I do agree with Brandon Contes. The whole dynamic and the whole feel for a lot of people. And look, there are not a ton of die-hard, ride or die Darvin Ham guys, girls, sports fans. I get it. The optics may not look great, but in the grand scheme, if they are successful, they go to the Western Conference Finals, it literally doesn't matter. What I do think is rather interesting is something that was brought up as well because I have seen the pattern. Stephen A. and JJ Redick have disagreed on Smith's show. Let's be clear, Smith runs the show. They have disagreed, but it has always been cordial and it has been good debate about NBA topics. Also, Redick has called out the sports media industry and even the show as a whole because of the topicality that they have. Sometimes it's really good, provides nuance, insights, and other times it's just flat out fodder that doesn't have to be on situations in games that don't matter or outside of the arena that are flat out irrelevant. And I like that JJ called that out. But to see this turn of Smith going from appreciating a coworker to viciously attacking this person has been quite interesting. Now, this is where we get into, is it Smith being an objective media member? He says that he's still a journalist. I believe those days are long gone. But is he doing a journalistic angle by saying he spoke with coaches here and there and they disagree with it? Or is it Smith having a personal vendetta against JJ? What I would say is this. If there is someone like a Sam Cassell who has been an assistant coach for, I think the number is 15 years at this point, and he sees someone like a JJ Redick leapfrog him, and many others. I know Adrian Griffin was an assistant coach for a while, got the Bucks head coach, and then got fired midseason for Doc Rivers. But just assistant coaches that have longevity as such. I'm sure they would feel some type of way as well. And what you are doing, hypothetically, if you are Stephen A. in that situation, is you know the response you're going to get. There are only so many head coaching positions, and there are many more assistant coach positions. If I put in my time and I see a JJ Redick go past me because he's LeBron's guy, I would probably have questions about the podcast too. I think we need to understand, because it's pretty clear to me, who Stephen A's sources are and how, rightfully, they could be disgruntled about this, which is totally fine. I would say, though, was this the same reaction when Jason Kidd leapfrogged a lot of assistant coaches as well and was given the keys to multiple franchises without putting in the time? Because that's really what it comes down to. Is, did this person put in the time in order for, from the perspective of these long-time assistant coaches, deserve it? Lastly, let me say, there are many on the network who will attack JJ Redick. I think we have seen over and over and over again how Pat McAfee will always preserve the bag and the show by coming to the defense when it's not only somewhat easy, but also makes sense. Appreciate you watching. Leave a comment below. We'll interact there. Have a great day.